I'm Sari Kimbell, and I've done just about everything in the food industry. I have helped hundreds of packaged food business entrepreneurs, and now I want to help you make your delicious dream a reality. Whether you want to be successful at farmers markets, online, or wholesale onto store shelves, food business success is your secret ingredient. I will show you how to avoid an expensive hobby and instead run a profitable food business. Now let's jump in. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. Great to have you here. This is kind of a big deal for me. I'm excited to talk with Elliot Begoun. He is a 30-year industry veteran, author, and the founder of TIG. And they are a one-on-one, one-to-one customized alternative accelerator focused on helping emerging natural products grow. TIG works with its entrepreneurs to build nimble, capital-efficient, resilient brands that become tardigrades, not unicorns. Catch him on so many great places: Food Bites, the Hirschberg Entrepreneur Institute, the Natural Products Business School, and tons of articles in Huffington Post, Smart Brief, and New Hope. So he is definitely an industry veteran, and I'm making you sound really old, but you're not.
I am. I just got back from a weekend of being grandpa, so I'm officially old.
Oh, well, welcome, Elliot. Thanks so much for being on this podcast today. I really appreciate your time.
No, it's my pleasure. Honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Happy to talk about this stuff. I love it.
And we should have added a podcast host as well on here. You started a podcast in June. You had some time on your hands.
Yeah, it's a lot of free time. We were just talking about it before we went on air. It's been a labor of love. I honestly wasn't really going to do it. And we started trying to create smaller kind of fireside chat where founders could come in and ask the questions themselves, and I could just get out of the way. And then a few folks came to us and said, this would make a good podcast. And I said, hell no. Don't want to do it. Don't have the time to do it. Don't know how to do it. It's super scary, all of those kind of things. And they came back and said, if we could find a producer who could do all that kind of stuff for you, would you do it? And I said, yeah, if you could do that. And that's what we've done. And it's been actually really, really fun. We've had some great, great conversations with folks. I think it's such a great format. This is a podcast, and it's so important that entrepreneurs, founders have access to information that meets them where and when they need it. So whether it's, when they are out on a walk trying to, kind of get their heads on straight, or whether they're doing some kind of activity and they want to keep, learning in the background, or in our case of my podcast, if they just need a baritone velvety voice to put them to sleep at night, and they can count on me.
So like I said, before we went on, I have known about you for a long time. I connected with a partner in TIG, with Waven, and found out about you guys. And he definitely has referred a lot of folks my way that are too early stage for you guys. But can you tell us a little bit more about TIG or the Intertwine Group? You guys did some rebranding, I think, not too long ago.
The Intertwine Group just sounded like an old CPA firm, which is anything but us. I always like telling the story basically as to the why, and it was to me. I've been in this space for a lot of years when I started this 8 years ago, and it was really about trying to understand two fundamental questions that just didn't sit right with me. The first is, if you looked on paper, and these are more recent stats now, but at the time the number wasn't all that much different, but from 2009 to 2019, that 10-year span, somewhere around $18 billion of market share, source dependent, moved from the largest CPG companies to emerging brands. So it was obvious that consumers and everybody was seeing that the innovation, the people that were the change agents, where they wanted, where consumers wanted to, vote with their dollars, were with these emerging brands. Yet at the same time, roughly 80 to 90% of the CPG brands that started were gone within 2 years. And that to me was maddening. How could so much? So that basically meant it was very, very bifurcated. There were a select few who won huge, and then everybody else, the 80 to 90% lost. And I just felt like that was something that needed to change, because there is no greater change agent in my mind than commerce and entrepreneurship when harnessed for good. And so we really wanted to come in and figure out, how could we do that? And it started with studying and trying to understand, why was it that certain brands, certain founders outperformed others when on paper they didn't look all that much different. And what we found is that those that outperformed really were following what we have now come to call the threefold path, which is just this kind of, I call it a path. Visually, it probably looks more like a plate of spaghetti because there's so many activities going on simultaneously. But it's this aggregation of activities that the entrepreneurs that were outperforming were engaged with, and that's being dispassionate about their business. So I always say being passionately dispassionate about their business. Building and really understanding, are they scalable? Are they investable? Is there real product market fit? Do their unit economics work? And just being relentless in those questioning of themselves all the time. And then constructing a real cogent growth hypothesis that is testable and measurable, and raising the capital that they need based on that growth hypothesis, and then getting out of the market and growth hacking, testing those assumptions, trying to find out what's right, what's wrong in ways that are controlled and not existential threats to their business, and then preparing to scale, activating their brand, assembling the right team, thinking about culture, getting plugged into the ecosystem. And then the other two aspects are really working on cultivating community, and three types of community in specific: community of consumers, which is what most of us focus on, but there are two other really important communities, and that's your community of collaborators. So your peers, the other people in this industry who can really work with you in concert to make things happen. And then your community of champions. Those are your mentors, advisors, service providers, retailers who fall in love with you, all of those kind of people who can break down the barriers. And then the last thing is probably the least sexy of them all, is they instill rigor, accountability into the business, right? They really are committed to doing the things that need to be done, like having financial reviews and objectives and key results, and pre-call planning, and a task management system, and all the things that nobody got into this business to do, but it's doing those things that make the business work. So
yeah, well, that community piece is huge. I find a lot of my folks who just have that idea, right? They're just launching. They really underestimate the value of the community of their peers and the community of their champions, and having advisors and experts and mentors. So that's really great you said that. I'm sure you see a lot of, I know.
Yeah, we do, but we also, try to foster it outside of that. And that's why doing things like you're doing with this podcast and doing them together, and, it is so important, because, my favorite, visualization of this is kind of, I can see all the founders, they're climbing the ladder to success in this business. And as they reach, one hand up for the next rung in the ladder, they're reaching the other hand below to pull the next person up. And that's when this industry is at its best. And I think, it's really one of the unique industries in the fact that there's a lot more of that activity than in most, because in many other industries, that same ladder, it's the person that's stomping on the head of the person behind them, trying to knock them off the ladder. And, and that's what we see in so many other businesses.
Yeah, we're trying to change that. Well, this is why I wanted to have you on, because when you talk about rigor and capital raising, that is what you do as an organization. Is one of the pieces that you do at TIG is to help brands get ready for raising money, to raising that seed money, and going on, to really grow their business. So I just really want people, I want to talk about that piece of raising money. So why do we even need to raise money as a brand? Like, I mean, I have so many people that just want to bootstrap for as long as possible, but at what point should they
Yeah, I
consider
think one
that
thing
they
to
need to
just
raise
call out there is
money?
if you don't, not every brand does need to raise money. It really depends on what your long-term goal is and what you're defining success, uh, you know, uh,
Yes,
as,
100%.
because
Yeah.
what I see a lot of people do is they start running the race, but they don't understand where the finish line is, right? um and there's all different forms of capital and all different ways to raise money, and that's the other thing that I see
Yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs not understand. We think the only way to raise capital is with venture capitalists, and it's not true. It really depends on what you see. Not every brand has the huge scalability and the opportunity to be massive and have a strategic exit. But those that do, speeding up that trajectory, making sure that you have the arrows that you need in the quiver to do it, and being able to make it happen while the window of opportunity is open, maybe because you've got your first to market or you're doing something disruptive and so forth. That's the time to go raise the money to accelerate that growth and maximize the value. And what you're basically doing is you're doing two things. You're inviting people with their money to come help you do that, and they're assuming some of the risk and taking some of the risk from you, and also they're giving you the resources that you need now to get where you want to go versus having to wait. There are other brands that have the capability of maybe not getting to that crazy kind of hockey stick growth trajectory, but have the capability of building really meaningful, good businesses with strong EBITDAs and so forth. And that's a different type of investor profile. Those are people who might be interested in owning a part of a business that has distributions or, dividends, or isn't necessarily looking for the same return, but also isn't willing to take on the same risk. And then there's everything in between. So,
Right.
It starts with an entrepreneur asking themselves, why am I in this? Where do I want to go? And how do I define success? And the way we suggest doing it is really, not starting with, do I raise capital? And if so, how much? But starting with that growth hypothesis and building out bottoms up where you believe you can take the business, and see where taking that business is likely going to what it's likely going to require in terms of capital, and then building your capital strategy in order to fund that growth hypothesis, not the other way around.
Right. Oh, that's so good. I think, yeah, knowing that you have your own path, that there is not, I think a lot of times people are like, I need to raise money. And it's like, well, why? Well, because that's what XYZ brand did.
Yeah,
It's
we
like,
do.
well,
We do
that's
this.
not,
No,
that's
that's
not a
such a
good
great point. We
reason.
do this. We do ourselves an injustice in the fact that, it's kind of like, you know, uh, you know, social mores. You get into a social situation in this industry, and if you were to sit back and listen to the average dialogue, if we were at Expo West or something like that again, you would hear questions like, how much have you raised? Are
Yeah.
you hoping to, when are you going to exit? How many stores are you in? What's your velocity? So it's kind of like name, rank, and serial number. And if you're not participating in that level, you start wondering, am I doing the right thing? You start having FOMO, and it's not the case. Not every brand needs to get on the hamster wheel of capital. But if you are the right brand, you shouldn't be afraid to do it either. And most of the investors in this space are really good and want to work with great entrepreneurs and good brands. So it can be a win-win relationship for sure.
Yeah. So when a brand realizes and it's part of their success plan that they need money, what are some of the things that you recommend that they need to do to be ready?
Well, the number
for that
one
capital?
thing is they need to understand how they're going to make the investor make money, right? So, because if they can't compellingly tell a story around why you represent a good investment, then it's going to be very difficult to win that investment. So it starts with really asking and being able to answer, why do we represent a good investment opportunity? And if you can't answer that, then you shouldn't be raising that money yet, because you're unlikely, first of all, to raise it. And if by happenstance you do, you're likely not going to know how best to deploy it. And that's the second thing, is to, getting back to that growth hypothesis, really understanding. So, if you have a 5-year revenue horizon, where those revenue sources are coming, and the buckets that you're going to need to be able to leverage to do that, marketing, team, acquisition, operations, et cetera, all the way down to working capital, then what you're going to need to fund that, and you'll know exactly where to spend it. You'll know right away, and being able then to walk an investor through that. Hey, I'm raising this money, and here's why I'm going to be spending this, and this in order to get this in revenue.
I have a client that she said, "Hey, I could go get this grant," or it wasn't even a grant, a low interest loan because of COVID, and she said, "Should I do it?" And I was like, "Well, why are we going to do this?" It's like, if you can't answer why we're going to do this, like, well, let's talk about it and see if that could be something part of our growth plan. But let's not just take on money for taking on money's sake.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not free
and
money.
so, and even if it is, what happens is you lose discipline, or you feel the need to use it or deploy it, and you make big mistakes. And two things happen when you do that. You're either left with a debt, or you've given away a portion of your company. And because you have nothing to show for it, it just makes it harder to raise the money to replace the money you've already used. And so I love founders who, try to bootstrap as long as they can first, to learn, to get scraped up and bloodied and try to do that. And I think the exception of that is that if you have a product or a brand that being first to market or speed to market is vital, because whoever gets there first is going to win, then that may change that. But in most cases, most of the brands that we see are, tweaks and iterative attempts at things that already exist. And so it really comes down to the ability to build a compelling brand story that gets consumers to separate from their wallets, to buy the product. And starting small, improving that, and then building from there, and doing that as scrappily as you can, is going to give you more confidence when you go in front of investors, and is going to give investors more confidence when you do show up.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like when we talk about downsides of raising money, I heard debt, taking on unnecessary debt, giving away part of your company. I guess time, like, it's very time intensive.
Yeah. It also means that you're no longer in many ways, the sole decision maker. And that sometimes, if you don't do a good job of profiling your investors, you have competing agendas or competing wants. And, and depending on the size of an investor, but an investor relationship's like a marriage. I mean, there's a lot of intimacy in it. You're very vulnerable. You're very exposed. You're talking about money. It's very tied to something that you care deeply about. And the wrong investor relationship can make the whole journey just miserable, and makes, both sides less effective if you can't get along. So that's a downside. And the other downside is, not thinking about, if you raise now, you have to think about what's next after that, what's next, to make sure that you're making the right decision to build for the next time and the next time. And if you just think about this time, then often you put yourself in a situation where you're less appealing the next time.
Oh, interesting. So not just thinking about this first round of raise.
I always recommend that every entrepreneur build, and it's always going to change, because, I don't know if we're allowed to say this on your podcast, but shit happens. And so, it's always going to change, but it's still the right discipline is to build a 5-year capital horizon. So understand the capital that you're going to need to bring into the business over the next 5 years, based on where you believe you're going, so that you can always be thinking about those steps along the way and being planful around it, so that you're not just thinking about this raise, but you're thinking about your subsequent raises.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then, of course, the upsides are that if you do have a product that you're trying to get to market first, it helps to accelerate that.
Yeah, I think one of the big upsides is that the right
major
investors, could be huge difference makers in your business. They can open up doors. They have wisdom. They have, a lot of them were former operators. They have the benefit of seeing, and being with other companies in their portfolio through their struggles and through their upsides. And the right investors understand too that by being active participants, they're in fact de-risking their investment and increasing the chances of success. So they can be force multipliers. They can make big differences well beyond the capital that they put in the business in terms of speeding it along. And so that's really important to understand, and also be ready to define, for an investor, and as you look for investors, what support do you want from them beyond just the capital? Because if it's just the money, then really all you're looking for is anybody with a wallet and a pulse. But if you're really trying to, win investment from people who are sophisticated investors in this space, they can do so much more for you if you welcome them in and bring them in as the partners they should be.
Right. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that intangible social capital is really helpful for a lot of brands. Are there other ways that you suggest or tell people, help people raise money, or is it mainly through?
No, there's so many ways to raise
or
money. So let's just examine a few of them. So you've got VC, and I will tell you that's for early stage brands, the ones likely listening here today. That's the hardest route, because the funds have gotten bigger because this is an exciting business, an exciting sector, and we've had good success. So the funds have grown, which means the average check size that those funds write have grown, which means that they don't intercept brands until they're further along. So it's created a funding gap where, it takes brands have to get further on less in order to get there. But VCs are just one form. Obviously angels are another, and there's angels come in all different sizes, and every brand has their own. There's angels who are, active industry angels who are, truly just individual venture capitalists. There are others that are also in this industry that are people who have been, the beneficiary of this industry for years and want to give back and support other founders. But then there's, everything from social impact funds and angels in this space who are just, cause related and wanting to support founders and brands. And so really understanding that. And then, what's really changed in the last 18 months and even more so recently is equity crowdfunding. Platforms like WeFunder and Republic and Start Engine and Microventures, where now you can raise up to $5 million from both accredited and unaccredited investors and publicize it and market it and build not only investors, but potentially evangelists, and raise quite a bit of money in reasonable terms and so forth. So that's a kind of interesting democratization that's starting to occur. And then, of course, I always say, don't forget debt. And, there'll be certain times along the way that you'll start being able to be able to get debt-based instruments, but asset-based lending, where you're financing inventory, POs, and receivables and things along those lines, can be big difference makers, because debt is in the long run always going to be substantially less expensive than equity.
True that. Okay. And of course, friends and family who want to donate to the cause.
That's always, it's a challenge. It comes with its own, nuances, and make really, first of all, of course, make sure that you're actually taking money from accredited investors. And secondly, make sure that you're taking money from people who are your friends and family who can afford to lose it. Because I've had a lot of tearful conversations with founders who are pushing and staying in a business that is given every signal possible that it's not viable just because they don't want to have to tell their friend, their family, their mother, their aunt, their uncle that $25,000 check you wrote or $50,000 check, I'm sorry, but I've lost it. They need to know that. You need to tell them that. You need to make sure that everybody understands, as much as they may love you and believe in you and believe in the brand. And trust me, most of the brands that don't succeed have nothing, that's lack of success has nothing to do with the capability, desire, or hard work of the founders. It's just, It's just hard. But they need to know that.
Great. Good advice. Being very careful with, I think people are quick to jump on, aunt giving you $2,500 or $25,000.
But it's tough because they want to support you. They want to believe you. But a lot of times they're doing that, they're pulling it out of retirement accounts, and so you just really, and again, also just to, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving legal advice here, but I would, and by the way, anytime you're raising money, having a good attorney by your side is critical, especially one who understands this space. But you want to make sure that you're receiving money from an accredited investor. There are many things that our government does that are mind-boggling, but the concept of requiring accredited investors is smart, and because basically what that does is it sets the bar that, if you're going to write a check, you have enough personal wealth that you can withstand the losses of it.
So that's so good to kind of know that there's not, I think a lot of people just go like, let me just go raise equity. Let me raise venture capital money. And there are so many buckets. And a lot of times it's, I always say it's the stair step, right? When you first start, you can usually do a little self-funding, maybe a little family loan, something like that. Credit cards. I mean, I have plenty of people who get started on credit cards, but then every time you scale up, you're going to potentially need bigger and bigger capital raises, right? If you're going from regional to national.
Yeah, I just want to talk about the credit card raise and so forth. This is something that I like to put out there, is that I get this question asked to me all the time. Are entrepreneurs just really, do they just have incredible risk tolerance? And I don't think that's the case. I talk to founders every day. You do as well, but every single day. And they're just as worried about their mortgage payment. They're just as worried about their 401k as any of us. They're just as, concerned about how much they spend on things they shouldn't be spending things on, and so forth. But the difference, I think, between the average person and the entrepreneur is that the average person sees the risk in taking action, and the entrepreneur sees the risk in inaction. And they are just compelled. Yeah. My gosh, what if I see this opportunity and I don't take it? What if I don't do this? But I think everything else, all things equal, they're not in general any more risk tolerant than anybody else. And that was an interesting learning for me because, over the years, I always thought the opposite, that these are the same people that like to go base jumping and doing all that kind of stuff. And they're not. Right. But I do want to just coach everyone listening here to really understand the decision that you're making. And if you're in a relationship, marriage, whatever, you have to, in my opinion, have these difficult conversations. But when you start financing a business on your credit cards, even if you say, I'm only going to do it for a little bit, or you agree to a loan that requires a personal guarantee and so forth, what you're doing is saying, not only am I taking the risk, but I'm taking all of the risk. And if this doesn't work, instead of being able to dust myself off, grieve, cry, do all of those kind of things and come back to fight another day, I could be left with potentially a very, very burdensome set of debts that not only can limit my opportunity to do something again and try again, but also could really be a heavy burden on myself and my family. And I've seen lots of relationships really destroyed by this and so forth. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm
Right.
just saying make sure that you do it eyes wide open and really ask yourself, okay, what if I am just wrong and this goes not the way I hope and I'm left with this? Can I really service it? And is it going to do damage to my own health, my financial long-term health, and potentially to my family and et cetera? Because it's, I don't know anything that's worth that.
Right. So how important is keeping up your books as you're thinking about growing your brand? And do you see brands come in with their books pretty well tidied up, or need some help in that area?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it runs the gamut. I see things on both ends of the spectrum. I think most are somewhere in the middle. I think it's really important, two things. One is that you do instill that rigor around accounting. I mean, you don't necessarily have to go right to GAAP accounting, when you're a small brand, because that's, arduous and expensive and so forth. But having, a good general ledger that's broken out so that you can really understand your buckets. I encourage everybody. It's something that I know I do with the Hirschberg Institute with Gary Hirschberg and Andy Whitman a lot is, really promote and push the use of cash flow forecasting, because that's probably the most important, especially in the first few years, most important financial thing to understand clearly is, what's coming in and what's going out, and being able to forecast and predict that so that you can see any impending cliffs or, things along those lines. And then over time, just continue to get better and better and better, because when you go to raise capital, the more sophisticated that capital, the size of that capital, the more demands are going to be on that. But also, the right financial information makes you a more effective entrepreneur. And so to me, the right is, really understanding contribution margin and really understanding cash flow. If you had to pick two numbers to really understand at the early stages of your business, those two numbers would be number one and number two.
Yeah, so good. I mean, I have a really inexpensive cash flow course, video and spreadsheet, and it's like, and I work with my clients on it, and it's like pulling teeth at the beginning. It's like, this is so important. And I really try to work with them to create like Monday for 30 minutes. Cause if you keep it up, it's pretty easy to maintain. It's just,
that's, anyone listening, you should take that. You should really, really dig into that. I promise you, it's scary. First of all, it's scary.
It is scary. I think there's a lot of people who don't want to look at it.
They don't want to look at it, and you think like, I'm just so much happier being oblivious. But the truth of the matter is, I know a lot of founders who have night sweats and they're worried about. Over time, what you'll learn is when you can be able to have some predictive sense of the way your business, it's empowering. It's real, and it's a huge release. And so at the beginning, it sucks. It's terrifying. And like I said, nobody gets into this business that I know of because they want to sit, Monday evenings and do their cash flow. I mean, it doesn't drive people, but it's part of that, that threefold path of the people that outperform. They're the ones very close to it.
Right. And that is building in that rigor, like you said, and just the regular attending to the business of your business instead of just the fun, sexy parts of like making your product or social media or whatever kind of gets you going. But I find most people get into the business because they're so passionate about their product, and then they learn all the business pieces that come with it. So
yeah, I agree.
Be a challenge, but so important to get started. And I love that piece about it does give you freedom. It is really scary to start. I think we all want to put our head under the sand and be like, no, it's great. I mean, even when I do cost of goods sold with people and they're like, oh, I thought I was making more, like the pencil on the napkin.
In this business, the more you can see in front of you, the more that you can make good decisions. And sometimes knowing is scary, but I will tell you, not knowing is scarier.
Yeah. So good. So you told us a little bit about why TIG exists and how you help. Maybe could you share with us a little bit more if people are thinking, oh, maybe I'm ready for that kind of help to get me ready for capital, or tell us a little bit more about when a company would be ready to come to TIG.
We have two programs. We have our tardigrade accelerator program and our tardigrade incubator. And let me just first help people understand what the hell am I talking about.
Yes, I love that word.
So this happened a couple of years ago. This industry and most startup industries celebrate the unicorn, that mythical brand that has the, huge, rapid escalation and then sells for some crazy multiple for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
The problem is that those is about as frequent as a unicorn, hence why they're called that. And so I started trying to do research for an article I was going to write on what I was going to make the antithetical mascot to the unicorn. And I stumbled across the tardigrade, which is a microscopic, small, tiny animal, which represents these small, tiny brands compared to the big, behemoth CPGs like Nestle and Unilever, et cetera. They're also they pioneer new ecosystems, and they're able to live in all kinds of crazy environments, from high radiation to the moon to the bottom of the ocean. And when things get really, really tough, they're able to curl up into cryptobiosis, slow their metabolic rate down enough where they can survive for 30 years without food and water. So to me, the tardigrade is everything that represents a good brand in this industry. A brand that pioneers new ecosystems, a brand that can find and survive in any landscape, and one that can be resilient enough to withstand the onslaught of all the things that's going to come their way. And so we wanted to build a program that really focused on helping those kind of brands build into meaningful brands over time that could very well become, venture sexy. We have two distinct programs. The Tardigrade Accelerator program is meant for brands that are a little bit further along, probably just post-seed or right around seed stage through Series A. It's an application-based program. And if the program, if we really feel like there's, first of all, fit is hugely important. And then if we feel our team can come alongside and really extend out and be their Sherpas along this threefold path and guide them, to make sure we're really helping them identify, all the elements of the business that work, and craft and build the right growth hypothesis and build that and execute the capital strategy and growth hack and build for scale and, establish community and accountability. Then we come alongside and help them do that. And they're usually with us for 18 to 36 months. It varies wildly, and they can, it becomes natural when that right time is for them to fly on their own. And then about 2 years ago, I started investigating, wanting to come up with something that was hybridized, that could be a one-to-many, that gave slightly earlier stage brands a lot of the tools, a lot of the information, a lot of the support that they were going to need to make those decisions and be eyes wide open early, but do it in a more accessible way. And I had purchased a learning management system and said one day I would use it. And when COVID happened, right after Expo West was canceled last year, I recognized that, if you look back historically, like in 2008 and other times when there was big periods of disruption in the economy, that's when there was an inflow and influx of entrepreneurship, because it's when people are shaken out of their nests and out of their comfort zone that they start rethinking what they really want to do with their lives and where their passion really
is. I've experienced the same thing. A lot of people wanting to start their
and
business. Also,
this sector has outperformed many others during this, and then of course the third being, the immense growth and speed of change within e-commerce. So I wanted to have a solution for those, and we created the eTardigrade Incubator Program, which is a 3-month long program where brands come in, and there's 8 online courses, lots of material, very dense material, but hopefully provided in a very different way, with video and audio and assessments and workbooks and all kinds of tools and tricks and hacks and resources. And then we have a weekly live interactive workshop. We have daily office hours where everyone, both our accelerator and our incubator brands, have access to our team to come in and ask questions right away, things that are top of mind. We have our own internal online tardigrade community where we kind of create this psychological safety zone where, founders can really ask the things that maybe they're, uncomfortable asking in a public setting. It could be, questions that make them feel foolish, or just they need to get something expressed because they're feeling beaten down, or and know that they'll have a community of collaborators that are going to support them. So it's something I'm very, very proud of, and it makes it much more accessible, and it's been fun. So,
oh, great.
So those are the 2 programs that we offer.
I'm so glad you started that online or that incubator version. That's great.
It's been fun. My wife always tells me that I was a misplaced college professor, so this allows me to sow those oats a bit.
Well, you do have the voice for it. So well, awesome. So if people are interested, then they can go either apply or go on.
Yeah, just go to our website, which we're actually in the midst of doing a redesign and refresh too. So excited when that comes out, but which is tigbrands.com. We have a strong ethos. I call it karmic boomerangs. I'm a big believer that the very, very best way to succeed is by giving, and without expectation of reciprocity. But please know that I am always happy, as is anyone on our team, to take a call and spend 30 minutes and offer advice with no expectation. So if there's anything we can do, reach out.
That is something, as I was getting my start in this industry and consulting, and I found that to be so true with Waven and with your organization, and you guys have been really generous, and it's something that I try to continue on in my own way as well.
That's what we hope. I mean, and it sounds like it's so altruistic or, oh wow, woo woo, but it just works. I mean, and this goes for any entrepreneur listening. I'm a believer in a network situation. Instead of trying to walk around networking or virtually networking and trying to think about what can you get out of this. If you walk into those situations and you think about how can I give, how can I help, I promise you that networking that you just did will pay itself off far more than anything you would have done if you were looking at it inwardly. And I just think, we need to do more of that, period.
Yes. So good. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about this next part around money mindset and money habits. I know we share kind of the same, a little bit, spiritual, but also just shaping our minds and being intentional about how we're looking at our business and managing our minds, because it can get out of control pretty quickly. And I know, we've been talking all month about money, and I had a money mindset coach on here, but I'm so curious. I'd love to hear more about what you see as like great habits for founders around mindset and especially around money.
Well, let's start with money in specific. I mean, one of the things that money comes with is what I call it's not my term, but just the way I refer to it is the comparing mind. It's kind of a Buddhist thought, but and that is, if you think about it, if that becomes the bellwether for success, then it's insatiable, because no matter where you are, unless you're Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, depending on the day, there's always somebody else in front of you making more, and it's rarely in this industry, although it's the it's the easiest thing to keep score with because it's tangible and it's measurable. It's the worst thing to keep score. And I can't speak to anyone else, but I'll share personally with me. I spent a lot of my career, especially the early aspects of my career, out of undergraduate, and then when I went back to graduate school, chasing, the corporate, the corporate golden egg, so to speak, and trying to, win as many titles as I can and make as much money as I can. And on paper had what would look like great success. And what I found is that the more and more I was met with that success, the less and less fulfilled I was. The less excited I was about what I was doing, the less pride I had in the job I was doing. And it was because I was chasing the wrong thing, the thing that doesn't matter. Truly, for everyone listening, Maslow was a genius, and there is a hierarchy of needs. And once you get past that, the incrementality, the difference in that money is not, in most cases, going to be life-changing. And the things that you may sacrifice and give up along the way to get there is very unlikely to be worth it. I think the right mindset for any entrepreneur is to remember why the hell you did this. Okay. And for the vast majority, it wasn't around the quick payday or the big payday. It was to have an impact, to make an impact, to give birth to something and prove that you had the capabilities, whatever that real intrinsic deep why is. Is so much what's going to serve you, because you have to have perseverance and resilience in this business. Money's not going to give you perseverance and resilience.
No.
But passion, belief, conviction, that compelling why will. And that's what you need to succeed. And if you focus on those things, the money will come. The money will come. I have learned over time that when I think about our budget and things like that, other than our basic budget in terms of making sure expenses are met, the way I measure success one year to the next, or the way I look at the business, is by the impact we make. We're servants. Yes. And so as servants, if we're having a positive or bigger impact, that's success. And the more we have focused on that, quite frankly, the more the economics of the business, improved. And I think the same is true for all of you listening, that the right mindset is to just come back to why I'm doing this. What am I doing? How am I changing, et cetera. The other thing I will tell you is that I have this conversation a lot around mindset. Rejection is a daily occurrence in this business. And nobody's for want of their opinion as to what you should be doing or could be doing, or why aren't you doing those type of things. It's a super difficult balancing act. If you think about it as a teeter-totter, on one side of the fulcrum is malleability, where a founder, anytime somebody says, oh, I think you should add this to your product, okay, then I'll put that in. Right. To steadfastness, which is, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. There's no way, right? And what you have to really get good at is knowing where along that teeter-totter you need to be at that moment. There are times where malleability will serve you well because you're getting the right advice. There are times where you're getting the wrong advice and you need to show strong, certainty and confidence in what you're doing. And there are times where you need to be in the middle. So what I would encourage you to do is, you hear those rejections, as you get that feedback, the mindset should be, let me search, let me look for that nugget of wisdom. Because within every criticism, with every bit of feedback, with everybody's, opinion, and within every rejection is a nugget of truth. There's some nugget in there. Sometimes it's tiny, sometimes it's massive. If you search for that, look at that and explore it and let everything else go. You just have to learn to do that. You don't want to block everything. You don't want to miss it. You don't want to discount it. You want to really ask, what is it that they're telling me? What am I missing? Why are they saying no? What is it that I'm not seeing? And ask them too. Welcome that feedback, embrace that feedback, but know that the reason you're doing that is to take that little bit of wisdom and use it. So I think, keep close to your why. Search for the wisdom in every criticism. And then the last one that I want to talk about, mindset, that I think is so critical and so easy to lose, is confusing the difference between the journey and the destination. Okay. All of you that are doing this, that are entrepreneurs in this space, you are truly heroes as far as I'm concerned. I think, to have the confidence, to have the courage, to have the moxie to do this is success regardless. But what we fail sometimes is we define the destination as success. That's it. We have a success. Anything short of a big exit is failure.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that I would put this training up against any of the top MBA programs in this country. I would put this training up against any of the corporate apprenticeships in this country. I will also tell you that you will become a better communicator, a better leader, a more confident person. You will broaden your network. This journey that you're on is remarkable. And there's a lot of tears along the way. There's a lot of laughter along the way. But if you're just solely focused on the destination, you're going to miss all of that. And that's a bummer. So.
Oh, those are so good. I love it. I mean, when we're talking about money, I know it's easy for me to just be like, yeah, business needs to make money. No money, no impact, for sure. And we should have goals. But money should not be the end goal. It's like you said, it's a measuring stick. It's a way for us to measure and keep score. But at the end of the day, yeah, how is it that you've changed? How can you have more impact? How can you leave the world better than
the only caveat I just want to do is that again, I'm not just, there's a big difference between, I'm talking about the money above the threshold of the hierarchy of needs, right?
Yep.
There are a lot of people suffering out there who don't have the money that they need for the basic necessities of life, things that they really do, that have, that worry every day about feeding their kids and paying their bills and keeping a roof over their head. And there's no way to take that stress of money away, quite frankly.
Correct. Yeah.
Other than, working as a society to help everybody rise out of poverty. But once you're past that, once you're able to reach homeostasis and really have, relative security, then you just, there's a great, in Buddhist lore, there's this great creature. It's called the hungry ghost. And it's this creature with this huge distended belly and this tiny mouth. And what it's basically the significance of is that it's just insatiable craving, and that's what happens. We start buying, we start doing, we start wanting, we start saying, if I get this next thing, I'm going to be happy. If I hit this next, number, I'm going to be successful. If I get this next raise, things are going to go great. And we're missing everything else along.
And that piece about feedback, I mean, the more we can just be curious about it. I did an episode called Think Like a Scientist, where it's like, come to your business as if you were a scientist and you're learning and you're growing, and recognize that we all have confirmation bias and desirability bias. But this is like, welcome in that feedback, and then take those pieces that ring true for you, but also be willing to not take things as personally. I think it's very easy as an entrepreneur to take things very personally.
For sure.
Yeah. For sure. So I love those. Those are so great. Well, I know we need to wrap things up. So what do you want to leave us with? What is kind of your one piece of advice for people, especially my folks just starting out? They may hear some of these words and they're like, exit. And
I would say that's actually a great thing to leave. Don't be afraid to not know. Ask questions. Be vulnerable. I mean, we use so many, of our own, colloquialisms and nomenclature in this industry. I think just to make us sound really cool and like, what the hell we're doing. And here's a little insight. We don't. We're guessing like everyone. But ask questions. Surround yourself with good people. Reach out. But make sure when you do that, that you're also trying to figure out how you can help them. It always impresses me when I have a conversation with somebody who calls and wants a little advice when they say near the end, is there anything I can do for you? Right? Is there anything I can do for you? So I think having that mindset, go ahead, reach up that next rung on the ladder, but pull the next one that's, coming up behind you along too.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Elliot. It's been a real pleasure. And I know this is going to be so helpful for folks listening today.
No, my pleasure. This was a great conversation. And thanks so much for having me on. It's really an honor. So,
I bet.
I love what you're doing in this space. It's great. It's so needed. So thank you.
Are you ready to start that delicious idea that you make in your home kitchen or grow your existing packaged food business and take it to the next level? The most successful food business entrepreneurs have support, guidance, focus, and accountability to help them make it happen quickly without wasting time or money. Plus, I think starting your packaged food business should actually be fun. Food business success is your secret ingredient to creating your food business dream. Please don't go this alone. Check out the private free Food Business Success Facebook group to connect with other foodpreneurs, get your questions answered quickly, share your wins, and receive special training and tools I only share inside the private community. Just search for Food Business Success on Facebook or get the link in the show notes. Curious about how Food Business Success can help you? Head over to foodbizsuccess.com and fill out the application to see if you're a great fit for the program. Together, let's make your food business dream a reality.